This is the American Law Journal.
If you apply for Social Security disability benefits, will you get them? It may come down to one simple number. What's your age? Good evening, I'm Christopher Naughton. Welcome to ALJ. The old adage is, the older you get, the easier it is to get disability benefits. But a former New York Yankee found out that's not necessarily the case. Gina Passarella with the Legal Intelligencer has this.
So it's Brian Doyle with a Yankee runner in scoring position. Base hit by Doyle. Pinello's going to have to come hard. Here comes Monday's throw. He is safe as the ball is fouled by Ferguson. Brian Doyle, right now he is 3 for 3 with 2 runs scored. And a couple of
Brian Doyle, a fairy tale story in Yankee baseball history. A utility infielder with a low career batting average, Doyle subbed for ailing star Willie Randolph in the 1978 World Series. And for 2 glorious weeks, he hit .438, driving in and scoring runs, making sparkling plays in the field, leading the Yanks to victory. That was Doyle's brief, shining moment in the sun. But in the 1990s, he contracted leukemia. His bones deteriorated, and today, in his 60s, suffers from Parkinson's disease, making life difficult, and according to Doyle, work impossible.
I am quite a bit homebound. I can't drive.
So Doyle applied for Social Security disability benefits, but the government turned him down twice.
I was extremely disappointed and frustrated.
And it should have been easier for the 60-year-old Doyle, because the Social Security Administration has set up medical vocational grids, taking into account one's education, ability to do light work, and age. Simply put, the closer to retirement age you get, the easier it is to get disability benefits. But not for Doyle. He didn't give up. After those 2 denials, he filed an appeal to get his day in court. Last November, after Doyle's case was heard by an administrative law judge, he did what he so often did in the '78 World Series. With 2 strikes and 2 outs, he got his clutch hit. And finally landed his Social Security Disability Benefits Award.
Have endurance, have friends and family to support and pray, because I'm living proof that almost after 3 years, I finally won my case.
For the American Law Journal, I'm Gina Passarella.
All right, folks, we're here with you and your telephone calls. I've got 2 attorneys here in the studio with me. We'll be joined by a guest from Washington, D.C. in just a couple of minutes. But first, Jess Leventhal joins us once again, as he's been doing for many years, with Leventhal, Sutton, and Gornstein, claimants attorney, the firm focusing on SSD and SSI cases, and seated right next to him. Familiar face now. I think I went back to the old VHS tapes, guys. I think it goes back to the mid-1990s. One night I'm going to pull him out. Alan Polonsky is with Polonsky and Polonsky in Audubon, New Jersey, formerly with the Social Security Administration, although that's getting further and further in the rearview mirror. Alan has been representing claimants for many years. First, I just want to talk about Brian Doyle, aside from the fact that I was a Yankee fan growing up. You know, we keep getting these stories about the fact that so many people are on the rolls, it's so easy to get Social Security disability. And then, of course, we find out, and we do the research, yeah, as you get older, it should get easier. And here's Brian Doyle, 61 years old. Took him 2 swings, actually a 3rd swing before he finally got the disability benefits. So it ain't so easy.
It isn't so easy, and his story is not really all that unusual. The fact that he was denied initially, he was denied on what's called reconsideration, and then he had an opportunity for a hearing before a judge. And that's where he gets to appear in person and explain his case to the judge. I'm not surprised he was denied twice. There could have been other issues involved.
Why not? Why not?
Because 2/3 of the people who applied the first time are denied.
Okay.
90% on the second time are denied. When you get before a judge, you get to appear in person and talk directly to the person who's going to make a decision. They could see him. The first people didn't see him. They didn't talk to him directly. Obviously, I don't know what his medical condition status was, but merely having leukemia wouldn't necessarily mean he was disabled. It's how did it affect him? How did it affect his ability to function?
Leukemia and then Parkinson's as well.
The Parkinson's. I mean,
Right.
just looking at him, you would say,
exactly.
well, why was this guy turned down?
Right.
But it doesn't shock me to see that he was.
Yeah, just this may be a little off the reservation, but the fact that he had some fame, maybe someone assumes that maybe he's got some money or something along those lines. Does that ever could that ever factor in?
I doubt it.
It shouldn't.
I know it shouldn't, but I doubt it. I mean, the biggest problem with this is how long he had to wait, which is the problem we're dealing with all of our clients now. So the first 2 levels probably took him at least 9 to 10 months, and he was sitting another 24 months waiting to get to a hearing. But the real question is, I don't know what kind of work he did after baseball. That may be what part of it.
Well, actually, and this is part of the story too. He was actually a coach, and he's a minister, and he actually went on tours. So the gospel for Christ and bringing kids out to play and all across the country. Well, he can't really do that so much anymore.
The tours are probably an interesting part of this, because he was still able to speak, and that may be what killed him at the first 2 levels.
Interesting. Well, at this moment, let me bring in Rebecca Vallis from CNN Studios in Washington, D.C. Rebecca's joined us before. She is the director of the Poverty to Prosperity program for the Center for American Progress. Rebecca, thanks for joining us tonight. You know, it's interesting. I know you just spoke again before Congress, and I'm going to throw a graphic up here actually provided to us from the Center for American Progress that talks about, before we get into the age issue, Rebecca, let me hit this, let me see if I can get a base hit on this one, because this issue comes up time and time again when we talk about disability. But some of the latest statistics, applications and awards, disabled workers 75 to 2014, if we look at applications per 1,000 insured workers, those numbers have gone up, but the awards per 1,000 insured workers, those awards have stayed level. Maybe they've gone down.
That's exactly right, and thank you so much for having me back on the program. So one of those things that people often like to say, but which is really kind of one of those Washington myths, is that somehow this is a program where the benefits are just really easy to get. The reality is, as you guys have been discussing, that nothing could be further from the truth. It is incredibly hard to get disability benefits. We have the strictest definition of disability in the entire developed world, and that's why such unfortunate and tragic stories like the gentleman you were just talking about really do happen within our Social Security system all too often.
And what's interesting, Rebecca, is here's a gentleman. Now, when he applied, he was probably 58, 59. By the time he finally gets benefits, again, by going to the third step in his state, going before the administrative law judge. But again, this is not a person that is really that far away from getting his benefits, his Social Security benefits. What is the explanation for such a delay when someone is so close and has Parkinson's disease, had leukemia?
So the reason that we all pay into Social Security, and really to the entire Social Security system, is because, you know, we never know what's going to happen, right? Disability and ill health, it's not something that's pleasant to think about. It's not something we like to think about for ourselves, and often people don't really think about it until it happens to them or to a loved one. But that's why with every paycheck, most workers in this country are paying into the entire Social Security system so that it's there for us in retirement, or in case we're not going to make it to retirement and our bodies break down before we're able to make it to that point, to that age. The disability insurance component of the system is there to catch us, to be really a vital source of income in that case. And so that's really why disability is such an important part of the system. To answer your question about the delay in the process, unfortunately, Congress, and I hate to make it a partisan thing, but it is, conservatives in Congress have for too long underfunded the Social Security Administration so that it doesn't have the resources that it needs to keep up with the caseload. And so what we've seen is just really catastrophic backlogs, people waiting a year, in some cases 2 years, to get to a hearing before an administrative law judge.
Right.
This isn't something we
and of course,
tolerated
Brian,
within the Veterans Administration. It's not something we should tolerate with Social Security, and the answer is as simple as Congress giving the agency the money it needs.
Jess.
Well, one of the issues actually that you discussed is the closer they get to retirement age. What I've noticed in my practice is that what seems to happen is the closer they get to retirement age, the higher the level of scrutiny is, where people are starting to think that they're looking to retire early. They're not looking to try and work again. So the scrutiny, I think, of the medical records is even higher as you get closer to retirement age.
And while this may not have been an issue with Mr. Doyle, because presumably he made a pretty good living while he was a ball player and whatever he did afterwards, but for most people there's a difference in benefits that you get at 60 than what you would get if you're found disabled. If you're found disabled, you get what you would get on full retirement age. For somebody who was born when he was born, it would probably be for 66. So he's getting the full benefit. If he simply waited and started collecting benefits at 62, he's only getting 75% of it. Now, maybe for him it didn't matter, but for the vast number of people, it makes a huge difference whether they collect disability or wait for retirement.
Again, we want to remind you, I did not remind you at the top of the show, we are taking your telephone calls tonight, 1-800-426-4625 here in the studio. Call in early, otherwise we can't get to your telephone call. So you just saw the graph that we put up there, is that, again, the likelihood of receiving SSD benefits should increase with age. There you see the people 55 to 59, the prevalence rate, almost 10%, 9.1%, 60 to 64, 12.3%. But it's interesting, Jess, what you say is, you look at that and say, well, maybe I'm 58, I can't do the work, that sort of thing.
No, not necessarily.
So in other words, are you saying the administration right from the get-go is scrutinizing these, or are you saying the ALJ, the administrative law judges, are scrutinizing these a little bit more tough?
The first two levels. I think that's how they scrutinize. They're scrutinizing it a little more closely, thinking that people may want to retire early. But the other issue that they really don't look at, it's one thing to lose your job because of the economy. It's another thing to lose your job because of disability. Mm-hmm. And people aren't looking, they look at adjustment once you get to age 55, but they're not looking at adjustment at age 50. And the whole issue of depression. And you're not able to do what you did. Nobody plans for disability. Unfortunately, very few companies carry their own private insurance.
Rebecca, are mental capacity issues more prevalent as folks grow older, at least within the context of disability?
So mental impairments are one of those things where we actually don't see a dramatic difference across the different age levels. You made the very important point that we should expect that people are more likely to have disabilities and serious health conditions the older that they get. You're twice as likely to be disabled at age 50 as you are at age 40. You're twice as likely to be disabled at age 60 as you are at 50. And yet, all too often, unfortunately, as Jess and Alan mentioned, there's this sort of stigma or skepticism or disbelief, particularly in the wake of the recession, that older workers are somehow faking or that they're just trying to retire early. The reality is that despite the fact that everybody often talks about how we're all living longer or everybody's getting healthier, those are really statements that are only true when you talk about people at the top of the income ladder and people with higher levels of education. And that's not what describes the bulk of the DI beneficiary population. So we need to be careful before we make assumptions about whether people can continue to work or whether they're really just trying to turn to an insurance program that they need more than ever.
Gotcha. Alan, you got a comment.
And what Rebecca was saying in terms of the disability population isn't identical to the population at large. Disproportionately, we're dealing with people of lower education. Approximately 20% of the people getting disability benefits have less than a high school education. It's less than 10% in the population at large. So we're talking about people to a very large extent with minimal skills, minimal background, work activity that was primarily physical and arduous work activity, and now they can't do that anymore. All they really ever had was their strong back, and their strong back isn't there. And for those people in today's economy, and the jobs that continue to exist for those people have simply disappeared. They don't exist for those people.
And the retraining has not happened. And the money for retraining has not happened.
Why not?
It just isn't there. Or Congress just isn't looking at it. There was supposed to be a lot more money allocated for people with drug and alcohol issues. That didn't happen. They've never allocated the amount of money they need for retraining in this country, and these jobs are gone. What do you do now?
Rebecca, do you have an explanation for that, or is it back to Congress is to blame?
Yeah, I think unfortunately, I should say fortunately, we hear a lot on both sides of the aisle about how people care about increasing opportunity, people care about investing in creating jobs. That's something that you hear from Republicans and Democrats alike these days. But unfortunately, there really only exists support to invest in those kinds of programs and policies on the Democratic side of the aisle. And unfortunately, with Republicans controlling both the House and the Senate, Obama has tried to do the best that he can. He just put out another budget a couple of weeks ago that isn't going to ever see any serious interest, isn't even getting a hearing on the Hill, because Republicans, they might have found better talking points when it comes to poverty and opportunity, but they're still wearing the same old shade of lipstick on the same old pig.
Rebecca, let's be clear though, a lot of people were worried this time last year, actually late last year, that the new budget was going to cut SSD back by 20% or so. That did not happen. The new budget was
That's
approved.
exactly right.
Okay. So then those people
there was a budget deal at the
Right.
end of last year, and
Okay.
it did include a provision to avoid those sharp benefit cuts, which was incredibly important for beneficiaries.
And last question for you, because I know we'll be losing you here in just a moment, Rebecca, but with so many people, with the baby boomers now, that, again, that pig through the python, whatever metaphor you'd like to use, with so many people getting close to 60 or actually in their 60s now, shouldn't we begin to see one of these years a decrease in disability applications?
So we actually already have. We have seen a drop-off in applications. We've seen a drop-off when it comes to the growth in the program, and that is because precisely what you just said, that the baby boomers who have been aging into their high disability years over the course of the last several years, that growth, that sort of bubble passing has caused in the program, it's going to pass, and it's already on its way to passing, and that's why the program is not, at risk of continuing to grow in the way that Republicans have often characterized it. It's a program that is on very sound and stable footing, just like the rest of the Social Security system. It's just an issue for Congress to deal with modest revenue questions, and hopefully soon and on a bipartisan basis.
Rebecca Vallis with the Center for American Progress, the director of their Poverty to Prosperity program. Rebecca, as always, appreciate you being here when we discuss disability issues.
Thanks so much.
All right, have a good evening. Let's take a couple of phone calls here. We've got some lined up, so let's go ahead. Let's go to Ted first. Ted from Allentown. You're up first tonight. What's your question for us?
My question is, at what age is a spouse eligible to collect the Social Security disability benefit of a deceased partner?
So if we're talking about a spouse that is themselves disabled, and depending on when they became disabled, they can start collecting at age 50. At age 60, they can collect the benefits whether they're disabled or not. It's the same definition of disability that applies to any other case. The reason I say it depends on when they became disabled, because there's a prescribed period. They have to become disabled within 84 months of the death of the spouse, or they have to be within 84 months of when they last received parents' benefits with a child in the person's care. So basically 50 is the short answer.
Anything, Jess?
No,
Anything?
he's right.
Alan gave the perfect answer. You get an A.
Thank you.
You passed the bar, Alan. We've got an email question here, and it's interesting because you mentioned something about a strong back. I've been a truck driver for 20 years, and it is back-breaking work. My doc says it's time for me to stop. Even though I like my work, my body can't take it. My back is severely limited compared to when I started. I'm 54 years old. It doesn't look as if they can offer me a desk job, which I wouldn't want anyway. What are my chances if I apply for disability benefits?
Probably pretty good, because now at 54, you're getting closer to age 55, and the rules change at 55. If the best you can do at 55 is light work, which is standing but unskilled, then he would be disabled. Between 50 and 54 and 50 and 55, if the best you can do is unskilled sedentary work. The work he did was semi-skilled, the driving work.
Right.
But if he can't do that work anymore, then the closer he gets to 55, the better off he is.
But my point would be, and I've answered this question 100 times in my office, is that if you're still working, keep working. Keep working for as long as you possibly can until the choice is made for you and you don't have any other choice. Because the process is not short, it's not simple, and you could be waiting a year, 2 years, sometimes even 3 years before you'd be able to get benefits. So long as you can hang in there and do it, but it's still you would have a better chance to get benefits the older you get.
But at the same time, what you have to do is plan into it. So you're looking at working as long as you can before the decision is made for you. Put away as much money as you can. Cut your, if you can, your overhead down, your expenses down. Go to see your doctors while you still have health insurance. Get the documentation. Walk in, tell them what you're complaining of, have the x-rays, the MRIs, the testing done, whatever it is, so that when you walk in, it's not that, oh yeah, we need to start doing this, and get the x-rays and see the doctors and talk about this.
Let's go to Dennis in Catasauqua next. Dennis, hello.
Hello?
Hi, Dennis, you're on the air. Go ahead, what's your question for us?
My question is, I was getting SSI and disability, and just recently, like back in September or October, they had cut me off because I was granted a pension from the military, the VA, and they completely took my SSI away. I was wondering, are they allowed to do that? Or?
So here's what happened. SSI itself is an assistance program. It's a type of federal welfare. So every dollar you get in income from any other source will reduce what you're eligible to receive. If you're getting a VA pension and either a service or non-service connected pension, every dollar you receive after the first $20 reduces the benefit. So if SSI is a little bit over $750, depending on whether you're in New Jersey or Pennsylvania maximum, if your non-service connected pension or your service connected pension is more than that, that's why you lost the SSI, not because anybody doesn't think you're disabled anymore.
Thanks for your phone call. Let's go to another Dennis. And again, a reminder, 1-800-426-4625. We're going to stick around in the studio once we leave the studio or once we leave the air at 7:30. Keep calling even past the half hour. Dennis, our second Dennis, you're up next. Hey, good. How are you tonight?
Pretty good. My question is, I just retired at age 62 because of my rheumatoid arthritis, and I'm wondering how hard it would be to get the disability part.
File for the disability and also file for your early retirement. So at least you have
I did file for early retirement already. I am receiving my early retirement.
File for the disability at the same time also.
That's what I'm trying to get right now. I mean, they sent me this green packet.
Right.
And it has like 20 pages on there to fill out. And
you have to do that.
Okay.
All right, what they really want are the names and addresses of your doctors, what treatment you received. That's what goes on the green form. At your age, 62, I don't know what you did before, but you do have a pretty good chance of getting disability benefits once you apply. But meanwhile, you're going to continue to get the retirement benefits until that decision is made.
Right, and once you get the disability, your retirement benefit will jump up.
Hey,
Thanks for your phone call. Appreciate it. Let's go to another email. This from Woodbury, New Jersey. If you have medical issues and you qualify for SSD, you obviously have serious medical issues. Why does it take an additional 2 years to qualify for Medicare?
Because that's the way it's always been, and that's how they set up the program in the first place. Do I have a good reason for it? There is no good reason for it. That's simply the way it works. I know of 2 exceptions. If you have kidney disease or you're suffering from ALS, they don't have the same waiting period till you qualify for Medicare. But other than that, there is that delay until you're entitled to Medicare. There is no good reason. It's just the way it is.
All right, let's go to Judy next. And I'm not even sure where Judy's from, but go ahead, Judy. What's your question?
I have a question. I was very ill, and I worked in nursing care. And I ended up being there to work, and I lost my job. I was told I had to resign, and I'm very ill, and I cannot breathe anymore. I have COPD and all this other stuff. I have an attorney that's not helping me, and
Judy, how old are you? How old are you, Judy? Can you hear me? How old are you?
Very.
How old are you?
52.
52. Okay.
Judy, Alan and I both get phone calls that the attorney's not helping them. Once you file your claim, if you've been denied.
Oh, I filed my claim in September.
Right. Have you been denied?
I've been to 2 appointments now, and they should have my medical records through my attorney.
Well, they're supposed to get the medical records on their own. If they're missing records, they'll contact your attorney and tell him what they're missing so he can help get the rest of, he or she can help get the rest of the records that you need. But that's what happens at initial.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for your question. We're going to try to get a couple more in here before we have to leave. Let's go to Christopher next. Christopher, good evening. Great name. Go ahead. Go ahead, Christopher. Go ahead. I just was saying great name. Go ahead.
Oh, I have applied for disability, and my right eye is completely blind. It's over 20/400, and my left eye is 20/40/20/60, and it was a bacterial infection, and it can come and go, so the left could actually get worse at times. And I actually broke my foot at work because I couldn't see the last step. So at that point, I pretty much decided I had to do something and apply for disability. What's the criteria for the vision? Does it have to be both eyes? Is it 20/400? Because my right is 20/400.
Okay, so let's step back a little bit. It's yes, in terms of being considered blind, it's 2200 in the best eye. So if you can't see out of one eye, but you still have better than that in the other eye, you're not going to be considered blind in terms of being disabled. But that's not the end of the story, because it's not really the condition that makes you disabled. It's the effect of whatever condition you have, or conditions in combination, how they affect your ability to function. So, for example, if you were a truck driver and you lost vision in one eye and you had impaired vision in the other eye, you wouldn't be able to be a truck driver. Then it's a question of whether you could do alternative work activity. So whether you meet the specific criteria for blindness is not really the end of the story. You may or may not be considered disabled based on what other ailments you have.
But at the same time, Christopher, you mentioned...
And obviously my foot has been ongoing a year now. But I was bartending, and it's not possible. Like, I can't see if there's a person beside me at waitstaff. I can't see if there's a class empty. And as far as, like, eyesight even on the left eye, it's hard to read a computer screen. Like,
go ahead, Jess. Get your answer. We're running out of time.
Right, but Christopher, what you need to do is you need to pay attention. One of the things you said was your left eye is bad periodically. So what you need to do is make sure you keep records of when your left eye is bad, so they can see the frequency of how often you would have difficulty with vision even of that eye.
Disability claimants are feeling the squeeze. Longer waits for benefits, lower approval rates by judges, and now Congress may be cutting their benefits. Good evening. The longest and biggest backlog in the U.S. today are Social Security disability cases, and many feel that they found their scapegoat. Gina Passarella with the Legal Intelligencer reports.
And one reason your backlog may be so big is because it's so damn easy to get benefits.
Not for me, not for me. I hear every case. I see every person that's ever appeared before me. Everyone.
Social Security disability used to fly under the radar. Not anymore. Discussion of disability benefits is politicized, contentious, sometimes mean-spirited. Often it's judges in the crosshairs.
And I have the right.
It's not an adversary system. There's no advocate for the taxpayer that's in the courtroom.
We have a non-adversary system, sir. It's a non-adversary system, and I have to wear 3 hats.
It can't be too adversarial, or you would not reverse the hearing officer 90% of the time. And some of your colleagues, 99% of the time,
And a controversial 60 Minutes program in 2013 likely didn't help judges either. Although the report focused on the fraudulent behavior of just one disability judge, the inference was clear.
That this case is just one example of widespread abuse.
With the jump in disability fraud allegations and the biggest case backlog in the government, the answer for some is to point the finger at the judge.
And apparently, these administrative judges, they're not reviewing the medical evidence properly.
Remember, if somebody comes before an administrative law judge today, they have already been turned down twice by people who absolutely know Social Security law. I don't mean to impugn them all. But we also have some very lazy administrative law judges who don't read the record.
Facing the backlog and criticism, disability judges are overwhelmed. They're expected to adjudicate over 500 cases a year, but spend only 2.5 hours per case, and do it with drastic staffing and budget cuts that date back over 10 years. And the complexity of cases they rule on today are far different from yesteryear.
50 years ago, you had very few claims looking at things like mental illness or what's effectively back pain. And these dominate most claims today.
With Congress facing a Social Security disability budget deadline in 2016, something will have to get done.
We don't have a problem that we can't fix in our country. They're all fixable.
But that may only happen if the bickering dies down and the political will rises. For the American Law Journal, I'm Gina Passarella.
Okay, 3 guests with me this evening. Let's go ahead and meet them. Alan Polonsky is a claimants attorney with Polonsky & Polonsky in Audubon, New Jersey. Joining us from the CNN studios in Washington, D.C. tonight is the Honorable Marilyn Zahm. She is the Vice President of the Association for Administrative Law Judges, and she hears cases herself in Buffalo, New York. And Jess Leventhal joins us tonight, also with the claimants firm of Leventhal, Sutton, and Gornstein in Pennsylvania. Folks, we're taking your telephone calls tonight, 1-800-426-4625. If you're bashful, email us tonight at info@lawjournaltv.com. If you don't call early, we will not get to your phone call during the program. Well, I want to talk to the judge specifically about the role of judges and the role that judges play in getting people or denying people benefits. But first let's address the elephant in the courtroom and what's happening next year. Let's listen to the acting commissioner of the Social Security Administration, Carolyn Kraft.
We should not have persons with disabilities wondering whether or not in 2016 they're going to still receive a full benefit.
I agree with that. Carolyn Colvin is her proper name, and the word is, and again, this was the first act of the new Congress, was to basically say disability insurance, we're going to be cutting that, or we're not going to be providing any more funds for it. So is it true, yes or no, could this fund run out in 2016?
Not really. I mean, it's a phony issue in a sort. The Disability Trust Fund is one trust fund. The Old Age Security Trust Fund is a separate trust fund. The Disability Fund is a much smaller part of that. In times in the past, they have switched money back and forth.
Right, but they're going to have to switch money back and forth to do this, to accomplish this.
It was known that they were going to have to do this 15 years ago.
Well, I know. And Judge, just a heads up here, of course, anything that smacks of politics, we're not asking you to answer that question. But as things stand right now, if nothing changes, people could lose 20% of their benefits in 2016.
Well, that's certainly something that Congress has indicated. If they don't replenish the trust fund, that will happen. But as the gentleman points out, it's not unusual for Congress to replenish the trust fund when it runs out.
Right. Somehow I think that someone may not blink this time, and this is also running into a presidential election. So, Jess, people probably shouldn't be too worried then if they're getting disability benefits?
I would hope that they shouldn't be. I would hope that they shouldn't be too worried. But given the type of brinksmanship we've seen in the last 4 to 5 years, anything's possible.
Okay.
I mean, a 20% cut when people can barely live on what they're getting now would be catastrophic.
All right, that's obviously something we're going to continue to look at as 2015 rolls on. Judge, let's go to you. You heard in that feature report a judge at the beginning of that feature saying, "I wear 3 hats." Tell us what those 3 hats that you wear in the courtroom, and is there anything like an administrative law judge in a Social Security disability setting in any other courtroom in the land?
Not that I'm aware of. We have a unique role in American jurisprudence. For the most part, other courts have adversarial hearings. That is, both sides are represented and the judge is the neutral making the decisions in the case, or calling the strikes and balls, so to speak. However, Social Security judges have to do 3 things, thus the 3-hat analogy. We have to develop the case for the claimant, we have to develop the case for the government, that is the trust fund, and we have to be the neutral arbiter. So we have a role that is unique.
So in some ways you really are claimant's attorney of sorts. You are, especially if he or she is not represented by a lawyer, you are representing the government, and you're there as the official arbiter of the case, meaning you're the trier of law and fact. So that sounds like a pretty heavy burden. Yes. That sounds like a heavy burden, and yet, if we listen to NPR or even the 60 Minutes special that you were on a couple of years ago, there is a wholehearted bashing of the Social Security disability system, and there are problems with that system, we understand, but it seems like a lot of people in the media appear to be leaving that problem at your feet.
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, we're the easy target. We are the names on those decisions. Therefore, since we make the decisions, we have to be held accountable for them. The other reason is, besides the fact that it's easy, in some cases it may be warranted. Very few cases, but there have been some which have been publicized. And the judge in question, in particular I'm thinking of the judge in Morgantown or Huntington, West Virginia, in fact did lack integrity.
Certainly.
So it was justified in his case.
Well,
but
yes.
He's an aberration.
Yes, well, and that's...
Our judges, and there's 1,500 of them with Social Security, are hard-working, honest judges with integrity, who are very concerned about the claimants, who are very concerned about the integrity of the system.
And that's Judge, and that's actually my point.
Put in a lot
and we may be having trouble with our feed here, but Judge, that is actually part of
the decisions out.
Judge, can you hear me?
We are the only union that I'm aware of which has negotiated our judges to be allowed to be in the office from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night, and except for the 8 hours that we are normally compensated for, we receive no compensation for our work during that period of time.
You know, part of what I've heard, Jess and Alan, is that there are members of political parties that say, we should really trust the experts. Don't trust the judges so much. Trust the people in the Social Security Administration. And again, if someone is applying for benefits, they're going to go to the administration. The only way you get in front of a judge, like Judge Zalm, is you have to be actually turned down first.
Correct.
But there has been this trend to say, let's trust the experts.
The experts are all over the place, unfortunately. You have doctors who think they're vocational experts. You have vocational experts who think they're doctors. That's why we have the judges, because the judges know the rules. The vocational experts don't know the rules, and I know that so well. We want to scream half the time, and the doctors don't have a clue. I mean, we have doctors who sit there and look at my 45-year-old and say, I can't imagine why they didn't get benefits, and it's because their date last insured was in 1982.
I mean, at the end of the day, disability is not a medical decision. It's a legal decision following a legal definition of what constitutes disability. Medical information is important, but a person isn't disabled because they have a particular medical condition. They're disabled because of the effect of the condition on their ability to engage in work activity. That's a legal consideration, not a medical one. So just saying that doctors should make the decision all by themselves, they don't often know what we mean by disability under the statute. And it just becomes kind of silly in a way to say that only medical experts should make the decision. They don't always know what disability means.
And Judge, what I was also driving at is that a lot of politicians say that we should really refer to the experts at the initial level, almost making it sound or inferring that judges are an afterthought. Why are we putting so much stock in judges when we have Social Security experts at the initial level? Doesn't that grate on you sometimes too?
Yes. Also, I think most of our judges feel that they are experts. I myself have been in this role for 21 years. I have seen enormous numbers of claimants, read thousands of files, listened to untold numbers of medical experts and vocational experts. I am on the front lines. The bureaucrats in their offices, behind their desks, who don't see claimants, who don't read those medical records, are not experts. I believe that I am. Also, let's take a look at the 2 levels of review that the claimant goes through before it gets to me. The first level is conducted by
a member of the administration, yes.
For the Disability Determination Services. That is a state agency that makes decisions on disability pursuant to a contract with the federal government. That person does not have a legal or medical background necessarily. They may consult a doctor or they may not, and they're probably not as familiar with the law, the rules, and the medical as I am.
Well, it just seems like there's a movement in this country to get judges out of the mix because, look, the problem has been, or so-called, the problem has been that too many people are getting benefits, that we have too many people on the rolls, we have a 1 million case backlog. I really do think, and I don't, it may sound like I'm currying favor with the judges, but it does sound like there's a group of folks in this country who would just think that the Social Security disability administration of benefits would be better off if we just got rid of judges. And you can't deny that there's somewhat of a movement in this country to go in that direction.
We were talking before the show, the percentage of people who are approved by judges and the percentage of cases that are eventually decided by judges. Of the people who apply, the 3 million applications that are filed, only 11% of those people ever get approved by judges at the end of the day. Of the people getting benefits, only between 22 and 24% of the people get approved by judges. So at these initial and reconsideration levels, as it is now and has been, the overwhelming majority of the cases are decided not by the judges, but by the state agencies.
And Judge, again, addressing the criticism that you folks are approving too many cases, let's take a look at some of the latest statistics. You go back to the 1990s, over 70% of the folks were receiving benefits once they got in front of an administrative law judge. Look at how those numbers have changed, 63%, 2011, 58%. Latest statistics, only 44% of the people who appear in front of people such as yourself, Judge, are getting benefits. Shouldn't that please the people that say the disability system is being abused?
Well, you know, there are a number of reasons for that. This is a complex area, this is a complex problem, and the fast and easy answers are not always the right ones. For one thing, for 8 years during the Bush administration, we had very few staff that were replaced because of attrition, so our numbers went down. Then in 2007, there was a financial calamity in this country. People were thrown out of work. After a while, people who could not find jobs, they needed some income, they filed for disability. As a result, we were flooded with applications. We had, at that point, a lower staff ratio, and were faced with an enormous problem. It's true, some people took shortcuts. A handful of judges paid claims because, quite frankly, the administration pushed us to make fast and easy decisions, and it was easier to pay the case than to write a very long affirmation or to do the kind of work that one would need to do in order to really evaluate the disability.
You have a comment on that,
claim.
Jess?
Yeah, but Judge, the numbers don't show that.
Go ahead.
Filed applications.
Go ahead, Jess. Keep talking. We're having a little trouble
Judge,
audio-wise.
unfortunately, the numbers are to the contrary. When you see the way that numbers have dropped, and I agree with you that it's not easy answers. There are a number of things that have happened over the last 8 or 9 years. But the numbers, looking at the numbers, the judges don't look like anyone is encouraging them to pay anything.
The agency, to its credit, introduced screens in order to pay cases earlier. Compassionate allowances for certain types of medical problems such as cancer that there was a great likelihood that the person would be disabled. Because of all of those factors, and then the scandal in Huntington with the judge who was just paying all of the claims, and I should add, that was facilitated and encouraged by the agency because their concern at that point was dispositions. They needed to get more cases out the door because everyone was clamoring that the backlog was such a problem.
Well, once again, Judge, you said that 90 to 99%, as they were alleging in that 60-minute special, that judges were willy-nilly giving 90 to 99% approval. If I look at the numbers, that was near impossible. And I just wonder if you feel that the judges were treated fairly by NPR and even by 60 Minutes, because I look back at some of those documentaries and it still looks as though they were putting, again, the blame at your feet, saying, look, this is not one isolated case. This is obviously fraud that is taking place across the nation. And I feel in some ways they did you a disservice, and I think they did the American people a disservice by saying that somehow this was widespread. These are very isolated instances, and again, I think they did a disservice there.
Former Commissioner Apfel referred to them as outliers, and there were outliers. And if there are judges, and there were, a handful of judges that were approving a huge number of cases, hearing a huge number of cases, and approving a huge number of cases. The judge is right. The agency wanted the cases out the door. They wanted the cases to be processed, and I don't think that's unreasonable in and of itself. Getting the cases decided is important. But you got to remember, as many judges who were approving everybody, there were judges on the other side. Just as many denying virtually everybody. There were about 50 judges or so on either end of the spectrum. There were just outliers, as Commissioner Apfel referred to them, who were just out of the mainstream. But the overwhelming majority of the judges were within a fairly narrow parameters in approving about the same number of cases or denying about the same number of cases.
You folks have been very patient. We do have a full bank of calls, so let's start processing some of your telephone calls tonight. Laura, you're up first tonight on ALJ. What's your question for us?
My question is, I have been waiting. I've been out of work. It'll be 2 years in September due to a back injury. And I've applied and I've gotten turned down. I have a lawyer involved. And I just don't understand why the process takes so long.
Recurring question.
No, it's unfortunately you're looking at 700,000 cases sitting.
Almost a million.
Almost a million.
Yeah.
We're now at 17 months at the 3 or 4 hearing offices that I work at in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. There's just an enormous amount of people. I mean, I'm hearing this day in, day out. People are losing their homes. People are getting divorced. I've got people who are living in tents in various woods around Philadelphia. I mean, it's a horrible situation, and unfortunately, it's not getting any better anytime soon.
No easy answers, right, Judge?
No, although the agency has taken steps to increase the number of administrative law judges this year and next year. There'll be an additional 250 judges hired this year and the same next year. However, we expect attrition to be 100 to 125 each of those years.
Yeah, but Judge, if they don't give you more staff, how are we going to get the decisions out? You can't even get enough cases pulled to be able to get most of the judges the number of hearings they'd like to do per month at this point. So are we going to get more staff? I realize it's not for you to decide that.
The agency is going to be hiring more support staff.
Good luck, Lori. Let's go to Jessica next. Jessica, you're on ALJ. What's your question?
Hi, I was listening online about the longer wait periods and the judges being criticized. I'm wondering, it's kind of concerning me about my case. I just applied due to the doctor saying I had to stop working because of MS. Should I get a lawyer? Will that speed up my case or give me a better chance of getting approved?
Well, I would like to say it would get the case speeded up. It won't. I mean, an attorney might be able to present the evidence quicker, might be able to get the evidence to the Social Security Administration quicker. MS is a particularly difficult situation to deal with because it depends on what your symptoms are more than just having MS. Should you get a lawyer? I'm a lawyer. I'm not going to tell you never to get a lawyer. I think it would be helpful. It might get at least something to do with getting the case, the evidence before the administration faster. But if you're denied at the initial level, and if you're in Pennsylvania, you're going to wait in line for a hearing with everybody else. And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot we can do about that.
Once again, hurry up and wait. And again, we don't see any immediate help other than what the judge just said, that hopefully some more ALJs are going to be out there. Maybe, hopefully with the economy getting a little bit better, less people will be applying. The baby boom is still moving through the system. We're going to still see that. We're going to still see the baby boom effect for at least another decade. Yeah, exactly.
You're still too young.
Right, it's still too young, I understand. Let's go to our next call. I think it's Ron is up next. Is it Ron? Okay. All right, we'll get right back to Ron. An issue that's come up, and Judge, you might be on the other side of the panel on this particular issue, or at least the other side of the NOSCR attorneys. Let's take a look at a small clip that we have here that I believe Tom Coburn, who's the former senator, talked about having another attorney in the disability courtroom.
Today, there are currently more than 9 million disabled Americans receiving benefits. A new report, though, claims that up to 25% of those receiving government benefits.
That was my bad. I actually called for the wrong one, but let's go ahead and address that one for just a moment, though. I'm hearing wildly disparate numbers as far as fraud in the system goes. We just saw something from a conservative media outlet there that said that there's 25% fraud in the disability system, and yet I go to the GAO, government organization, that says it's closer to 0.4%. Who am I to believe? Who is the public to believe?
GAO. Look, there's money involved.
Right.
And when there's money involved, there are going to be people who are trying to cheat. People cheat on their taxes. People cheat on their spouses. People cheat. Are the numbers huge? Are they anywhere like 25%? As I said before, if the judges are only approving of the people getting benefits 22 to 24%, unless every case before a judge is fraudulent, then that number is absurd. That number is ridiculous. If they're going to say the state agencies are right, well, the state agencies are approving the overwhelming majority of the cases. So to say that there's no fraud, no, that's silly. Of course there are people cheating. But is there anywhere near the kind of numbers that they're talking about? It's just not possible.
Okay, let's go ahead and switch to the issue that I wanted to raise, and I threw a curveball at my director, so I apologize. But let's take a look at this issue, and this again is Tom Coburn talking about disability lawyers. Do we need someone on the defense side, the government side, in the courtroom? Go ahead.
The answer to that is to have the qualified federal employees who made the decision to turn them down in the first place in the courtroom representing us for why they were turned down. See, we have nobody representing the American taxpayer in the courtroom. We only have somebody representing the claimant.
Judge, that's a fair critique, no?
Yes, I mean, that's the way every other court system in the United States works, is you have both sides represented. So there's clearly nothing wrong with that. I would point out that our system has worked well. It certainly could use some reform. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about what changes we think need to be made. But I think the government representative, and I'm not sure that that's a good name for it. How about the name actually Senator Coburn called it in his legislation was disability attorney. Have the disability attorney work up the case. If it turned out that the claimant was qualified for benefits, that case could be paid earlier in the process. That person would not have to wait as long. And the disability attorney, if he thought or she thought that the judge was clearly wrong, could appeal the case. Would that be so bad? I don't think so.
Which disability attorney? Am I going to be appealing the case, or I'm going to watch the government representative as a disability attorney appealing against his own ALJ? I'm not sure that's going to work, Your Honor.
And how expensive is it going to be? How many offices are you going to staff? As the judge said, there's 1,500 judges. Are you going to have 1 or 2 attorneys appointed to represent people in every hearing before an administrative law judge? 3,000 attorneys to be doing that work, and the staff that goes with them? They don't have the staff to do the job fully as it is, and you're asking for a staffing increase that's at least 50% over what they have now. I don't see how that can possibly work. And they tried that. They tried it 30 years ago.
Oh, did they really?
They did. They tried it. They had government representatives in hearings. There were a couple of offices, one in Arizona, I forget where else there was. I was working for the government at the time. I applied for that job. They tried it, and at the end of the day, they found out the percentage of cases approved did not change very much at all.
Very quickly, and by the way, folks, we're still taking your phone calls after the half hours over 1-800-426-4625. Even once we leave the air, we'll take your phone calls. Let's end on Bernie Sanders. Let's listen to this.
Mr. Chairman, the Social Security Disability Insurance Program is a life and death program for nearly 11 million Americans. This is a program that American workers have paid into It is an insurance program. This is not charity.
We've only got a few seconds left, but your comment on that statement by Senator Sanders.
I love Senator Sanders. Yeah, Social Security is the best thing our government does. We need to pledge that we will keep the system in place, assisting our citizens. As Gandhi said, the measure of a society's greatness is how we treat our weakest members.
Social Security disability claims are backed up to nearly 1 million. At the same time, judges are approving less cases and claimants are feeling the squeeze. Good evening, I'm Christopher Naughton. Welcome to ALJ. The biggest backlog in the U.S. government today are Social Security disability cases. What does that mean to the future of the system? What does that mean to those of you who are desperate for help? David Farenthold with The Washington Post explains.
Imagine a waiting list that is 990,000 names long. That's more than the population of 6 different U.S. states. Today, that's the number of people who are stuck waiting for a decision from the Social Security Administration's Office of Disability Appeals. It's one of the longest backlogs anywhere in the federal bureaucracy. More than the patent applications now pending at the Patent and Trademark Office, more than the veterans waiting for an answer from the VA. And the one at Social Security is still getting bigger all the time. So how in the world do you keep 990,000 people waiting at once?
Well, at Social Security, the answer is a little parable about how government's best intentions sometimes go awry. In this case, the good intention was to take an old American ideal that every individual deserves due process before the law and apply it to the vast caseloads of the new American welfare state. The only problem is that well-intended system has never kept up with the demand.
Here's how it works. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people apply for disability benefits, and no more than 40% get through. If they appeal, they eventually see one of 1,400 special Social Security judges. The judge's task is a big one, to determine if this person is too disabled to hold the job. Judges must read hundreds of pages of medical evidence, and some of it is in doctor's chicken scratch. Then there's a hearing where a judge must act as a kind of human lie detector, trying to gauge if the applicant is telling the truth about some invisible malady like chronic pain or depression.
Once a judge has determined how disabled an applicant is, they must then search the U.S. economy to see if there are any jobs this person could still hold. To do that, they use an official guidebook, the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. The problem is this book hasn't been revised since 1991. So it still includes jobs like telegram messenger and horse and wagon driver, which is sandwiched between horizontal stick-turning machine operator and horse race starter. In this book, the only listing for web worker is for a job repairing fishing nets. The word internet does not appear in the book once. Because the listing is faulty, the judges must do extra research and call in expert witnesses to figure out if the applicants could actually hold a modern-day job. Finally, the judge must write or help write a multi-page legal decision.
In recent years, Social Security pressured judges to decide cases more quickly. The backlog did go down, but some judges sped through cases by simply saying yes and yes and yes. A number of judges said yes in more than 90% of cases. And remember, these are cases that have already been rejected at least once.
Today, Social Security has changed tactics. It's limited judges' caseloads and encouraged them to take a little bit more time. But the result is they keep falling further and further behind. And this enormous backlog keeps getting bigger and bigger.
1 million case backlog. We'll weigh into that tonight, taking your telephone calls as well. 1-800-426-4625, the number right here in the studio. We'll be joined by a judge by way of On the Line from Texas in just a few minutes. But let me get to my guest right here on the set tonight. Jess Leventhal joins us once again from Leventhal, Sutton, and Gornstein. Jess, in the practice of law, let's just say for several decades now, all of it in the area of Social Security disability, right? Right from
Absolutely.
the get-go.
Yes.
From day one. You're a claimant's attorney, right? You started out that way, right?
Yes.
You didn't
Not
start
like
your own
that one.
practice early on, though, did you?
Yes, I did.
You did?
Oh,
Did you
yeah.
come out of law school and put your shingle out?
I came out of law school and actually worked for a year for someone else.
Okay, all right. Back in the day when
that
you could
was
put a
so
shingle out
entertaining.
after two or 3 years, you could put your shingle out. Also with us this evening, as he has been for almost 20 years now. I have to go back to the old videotapes. I think we have a turntable here at the station. We could probably play them on. Alan Polonsky.
I had hair in those ones.
Did you? I think, yeah. Well, at least it was darker what you had, Alan. Alan Polonsky hails from Polonsky and Polonsky in Audubon, New Jersey. And as I like to say, Alan did actually start his career working with the Social Security Administration, handling disability claims, right?
Writing
Back in those
decisions
days.
for the judges.
Right, okay. So you got to, I mean, not unlike prosecution, not unlike civil litigation, sometimes you learn what the other side, if you will, is doing. and then you change hats, and then you prosper.
We call it the good side of the force.
I'm
yes.
sure you have. I know you've worn the white hat many times. Let's take a look at this backlog again. I mean, in some ways, in the last year, what we've really tackled on this program is delays in Social Security disability, the argument on the left and the right, whether too many people are receiving benefits, the breakdown of the system. All you keep hearing is breakdown. And we look at some of the statistics. So we're up to 990,000 people waiting. That's insufferable. That's unconscionable, and yet it goes on and on. You guys are going to probably tell me, well, they're not giving us enough money. That's not what your adversaries would say, but that's probably where you're going to start, right?
I'm not so sure that they wouldn't say the same thing. I was listening on the way up here today. There was a discussion with the new Veterans Administration Secretary, and he was talking about the delays in the Veterans Administration. And he said, we need more resources. Well, they need more resources everywhere. They need more resources for the Veterans Administration. They need more resources for the Social Security Administration.
Here's the question: have they been cut back, or has the program expanded so much that we need more?
They've been
money.
cut back. There's 10% less, 10 to 15% less employees in the Social Security Administration than were there 5 years ago. They've hollowed out the process. They've gotten rid of the clerical help. They have professional people doing clerical help because they don't have clerical help. At every step in the process, there are less people, less bodies, less people available to do the job. And this is what the result is.
And again, Obama's been trying to cut back this deficit now going on 6 years. This might be one of the casualties, Jess.
It is one of the casualties, but it's been true for a number of years. They had gotten better at one point. Then it's slowly, unfortunately, you have a cataclysm of the baby boomers, of which Alan and I are part, coming into a certain age, and at the same time a down economy. And when you have the two of them together, it's whatever they would call a perfect storm. And unfortunately, it's hit Social Security, it's hit it very hard.
Joining us now from Texas is the Honorable Roger Schwartz. He is retired, former Social Security disability judge. He's joined this program numerous times in the past, but now that he's gone south, not figuratively judged, just literally, where you're now living in Texas. But it's great to have you on the program, and nice to hear your voice tonight.
Yes, thank you very much. I didn't get to hear what my two honorable attorney friends have had to say. I wonder if I could get my spiel in here, and then you can pick it apart if you wish. I'd like to take a somewhat iconoclastic view as a former active judge. I think we need a fundamental change in the whole process, and it probably would require a legislative framework to start the whole thing and to put it into regulations. The change needs to address just what is appropriate quality and quantity of legal due process for disability cases, so that we can say due process has been provided for each claimant. Right now, the legislature has provided for the right of a full-blown formal administrative hearing in accordance with the Administrative Procedure Act. And for each applicant for disability benefits, should their application for benefits be denied at the first application level.
Right. So they go to the Social Security Administrative Office, they apply, they're turned down, and again, depending on which state you're in, eventually, if they get in front of a judge, as you sat on the bench for many years, they have their shot of actually having a person see them, witness their proofs, their evidence, if you will, and also the judge gets a chance to eyeball that person. And again, this is the first time someone in the administration actually gets to see, if you will, this claimant. Now, what you're saying, Judge, is that, look, with a million-case backlog, I don't want to say you're throwing up the white flag, but something needs to change now because the backlog is just insufferable. And in a word or two, Judge, and I know it's hard to do this, but what do you think the answer is going to be?
I think we have to change this right to allow automatic hearings because the backlog shows that the process itself is, I won't say it's defective, but it doesn't suit the demand for administrative process. Congress needs to take another look at the concept of due process for disability cases. We have to concentrate more on written medical record reviews with well-developed, up-to-date listing standards. We have a backlog. We have 50 years of history of how to do these cases. There's a great database to to go back to, and I think we have a lot of information that we can draw on.
Well, then you can hear from the judge himself. He's basically saying, the position that he used to hold, that people should not have, quote unquote, an automatic right to appeal and get in front of a judge. That maybe we need to change the system that appeals are not automatic. In other words, Judge, there would be you wouldn't be impeded. You're not saying take judges out of the system, but that the threshold to get in front of someone like you years ago, it would be a higher threshold.
It has to be exceptional.
All
They
right.
have to. If we can develop standards which are well developed and include vocational, what would be a vocational standard as well when you look at the medical evidence. And this can be done. We have 50 years of data. Doctors and ALJs and vocational experts can get together. We would have medical listings which would have automatic vocational performance limitations built in.
Okay, Judge, let me get some commentary here from both Jess and Alan. And again, keeping in mind their claimants' attorneys, they're taking these cases. And actually, I think, Alan, Jess, you guys sometimes take the case right from the start, even before it might get to the ALJ process. But I think...
No, absolutely.
Right.
But one of the problems that I have with Judge Schwartz, who I respect and I was practiced in front of for a number of years, Judge, I mean, we have 50 years of history, but the 50 years of history is not making sense. You had years and years where they had dermatologists reviewing cases. We even have recently, we've seen doctors who don't have the right specialty reviewing cases. You know yourself that until you actually saw the person in front of you, that's what made all the difference. The records don't necessarily do it. They need to have something where somebody can see them face to face. You saw that, and I'm surprised at what you're suggesting now.
The inimitable voice of Jesse. I'm not saying that it's going to be easy. I'm not saying that I've got the answers in this simple half-hour interview. I'm saying it has to be looked at. What we have to do is recognize that the emperor has new clothes. Since I retired, we have 250,000 new cases added to the backlog of 750,000 cases I had when I retired. This system is not working.
Well, no, I agree, but Judge, we've known that this was coming. We've known that the baby boom generation was going to hit a certain point, and you have that, and you have the poor economy for the last 7, almost 8 years.
But there are other things too.
We have to evolve. We have to evolve. We have to legislate a different system. We have to look at what due process is for disability cases and recognize that the right to an automatic hearing for 1 million cases is beyond our capacity. Now, if we had billions and billions of dollars to put into this program, and if we could put 3 times the amount of judges, maybe we could give these people the hearings they want. But we don't have the money. We have the people. There's lots of people want to be ALJs, but we don't have the money to spend on it. So we have to change the system. We have to have a hearing for exceptional cases, and the cases, it would be like accepting certiorari. The ALJs would have 2 choices. They could have a summary dismissal of an exceptional case. The attorney would petition for a hearing for an exceptional case, and the ALJ would summarily dismiss, and the individual could start all over again if the initial.
And Judge, and some of this is based on the fact that, look, let's face it, when people just apply at the Social Security Administration level, they go into the Social Security office, they file a claim. We know that at best 40% of those people are going to get their disability benefits. Well, we also know that by the time it gets to a judge, historically it gets up to about 2/3. But are you aware of the fact, I think in the last Office of the Inspector General just said that even judges now are starting to really clamp down. Again, whether for better or for worse, maybe they're doing it for expediency, maybe they're getting tougher, maybe they're finding that there's some political pressure at their necks. But now even judges are starting to find approval rates somewhere in the 40s as opposed to the 60s. So in some ways, that political pressure has been brought to bear, and whether it's right or wrong for the claimant, those numbers are going down.
That's fine. But what difference does it make? You're talking about the number of cases where people are not getting their benefits. So what? the cases are still mounting up. People are not getting finality. They're not getting the answers that they want. They're waiting years.
Alan,
and
how long
years
do people
and
have to?
years.
Yeah, let's say I file a claim. Okay,
There's no closure.
how
There's no closure
how
for
long do I have to wait if I file a claim before someone says yes or no?
Well, if you're allowed at the initial or reconsideration level, we're talking 6 to 8 months. From the time you request a hearing until a hearing is scheduled now, we're waiting about 16 months, and it's getting worse.
Okay.
But I disagree with the idea that it's because, well, let's put it this way. The numbers show that last year, 680,000 decisions were issued. The year before, under virtually the same circumstances, 760,000 decisions were issued. The year before that, 800,000 decisions were issued. It's not just that the backlog is piling up. The Social Security Administration is slowing down. They're doing less and less decisions. The idea that you can simplify this process in some way is just a pipe dream. It's been a pipe dream for the last 30 years. I've heard it time and time again.
So is the backlog due to the fact that we're seeing district office closings? People are complaining that they're shorter hours, that there are longer lines. I've even heard of ineffective 800 numbers. Giving office of at ODAR.
No, it's not the district offices. That's not where the backlog is in this case.
Okay.
I mean, the district offices are a whole different issue.
Okay.
But what you're looking at and what you're talking about is they haven't hired anybody. But to go back to what Judge Schwartz was talking about, we have, and particularly Judge Schwartz was in Northeast PA. There is inadequate mental health care in Northeast PA. There's inadequate medical care in Northeast PA. You have to have transportation. People can't get to it. You're not, until you figure out to get everybody the health care that they deserve, and Obamacare is not doing it, the people, then you're not going to have the information. And he's talking about there's got to be a program where we can come up with numbers and vocational and meld it. They tried it. They went all the way through. And the cost of that was so tremendous, they killed it. This is 3 years ago.
Disability is never going to be easy. It's never going to be easy to make a determination as to whether or not a person is disabled. You do have to look them in the eye. You do have to see them in person. I was a staff attorney for 10 years working for an administrative law judge. The best lesson he taught me is that this is an opportunity for a citizen to come face to face with the person making the decision in their life. And that's what the disability hearing before an administrative law judge provides.
And that sounds like wonderful due process.
Tell me what's more brutal. Getting a decision in 6 months where there's closure and they say, no, sorry, you can't get disability. We looked at your records. We've had a whole panel of people review it. You can't get it. You'll have to go back and get more medical evidence. Or waiting 2 years and then maybe dying before you can get a hearing and not knowing whether or not you have disability and trying every which way to try to get to live and having no closure whatsoever.
Judge, if the alternative is to be turned down in 6 months with not having an opportunity to see somebody and talk to somebody and explain their problems, or to have a chance to explain
go back and
it.
get more evidence.
It doesn't always work that way. You have problems with the date last insured. You have problems with delays that way too. It just doesn't work that way.
We've got some phone calls and emails. Again, a reminder, 1-800-426-4625, and some emails we're going to roll in here. And I think this first question might actually be on point. Deanna from Philadelphia is up first tonight. What's your question for us, Deanna?
Well, I am 58, and I have early-stage MS. I filed for a Social Security disability a year ago, and I just heard I was turned down. Since I applied, I've now developed and I've been diagnosed with severe depression. My question is, will I have to go back and reapply since the depression has happened on top of the MS?
No.
And can I get a lawyer now and have a judge hear my case?
Well, yes, you can get a lawyer now, and it's going to take a while, and it's going to take over a year.
I'm sorry? Go ahead. Say that again, Deanna.
I'm going to hang up so I can hear what you're saying better.
That's fine.
One, you don't have to file a new application because you have a new medical condition. That's not necessary at all. You do have to file a request a hearing before an administrative law judge, and unfortunately, because of the backlog that we're talking about, we are probably talking about over a year before you're going to have your day in court. Though, you have some things going for you. You are over 55 years old. There is a good chance that you will be approved ultimately. There is even a chance under certain circumstances, though it's very rare today, that somebody could look at your case and decide this lady doesn't have to wait a year for a hearing. It's clear that she's disabled, and we're going to approve her case otherwise. But you can't count on it. You can't force it. More likely than not, you're going to have to wait for a hearing before a judge, unfortunately.
All right, we've got some calls backed up, so let's go ahead and get to those calls. Jess, you got one comment, and then we'll get to Wayne and
to go
Easton
back
next.
to the judge.
Go
The
ahead.
judge wants a final decision in 6 months. He's the most, half a million people are getting that. There's 500,000 people that never file appeals, that never go to the hearing. So it is final for them. There's only so many people that are filtering through.
Let's go to Wayne and Easton next. Wayne, hello, how are you? Go ahead,
Hello.
Wayne, you're on the air. What's your question for us? Go ahead, Wayne.
How you doing? I'm doing fine.
Good. What's your question for us, Wayne? Go ahead with your question.
Okay, my question, I did go through the process. I've been on disability now for approximately 4 years. And the first time I was denied. The second time I actually went by myself, got all my files, everything that I needed from the hospital, from my doctors, seen the judge, talked to the judge. The judge okayed it right there at the bench. He okayed it. And I actually been trying to work to get back to work, to get off it so I can actually, do better with my life, because right now I just feel it's not enough for me. But recently, February of this year, I was in a car accident. And doing all the PT, doing all the operations, I have a settlement coming.
Okay.
And my question to you is, since I'm on disability, how do I go about that settlement?
Okay, that will affect it.
The question is, what are you getting? Are you getting Social Security disability, or are you getting supplemental security income?
I'm getting disability.
Well, they're both disability.
Really?
Without being too particular, are your benefits over $800 a month or less?
Less.
Okay, we don't know. So.
No, so then you need to talk to whoever's handling your settlement, and you need to talk about structuring it so it won't impact your SSI and your medical assistance.
Okay, I'm actually doing it myself, but so I should get an attorney, you're saying?
Well, okay, you're settling your accident case by yourself?
Yes.
You need to slow down and
Okay.
talk to somebody about how this money is going to be structured and how much you're going to have to live on. Because if you're just getting SSI, it's going to blow out your SSI and your medical assistance.
Well, probably would blow out his disability too, wouldn't it?
No.
No?
No, if it's Social Security disability, Social Security is an insurance program. It's not a welfare program. You're getting an insurance benefit. If he hit the lottery for $1 million, it wouldn't change the Social Security disability benefit. It would affect the SSI, which is essentially a welfare benefit.
Wayne, just want to let you know, if you need some help in getting some advice in the right direction, you need to contact our office. Our number is there on is here throughout the program tonight. You can write to us at info@lawjournaltv.com or get the number from the operator that you're talking to right now. We'll give you a number. You can call our offices this week. We'll get you pointed in the right direction. Let's go to John in Dover next. John, good evening.
Yes, hi. My comment is on the judge level. It seems that some judges award disability at about an 80% rate, and then some judges award disability at about a 15% rate. Why is there such a discrepancy of the medical records at the judge's level? And how come they have such latitude? It seems kind of unfair.
I'm going to go to the judge, the former judge, Judge Schwartz first, and then we'll give Jess and Alan a chance. Judge, what of that? Why such a great disparity across the country in the same state? I know you're chuckling. Go ahead, tell us why.
They're human beings, and they look at the record and the evidence, and they make their decisions. They're not computers, and nothing is. Every case is unique, and people have different sensitivities, and they feel different pressures, and different factors impinge on their judgments, and that's all I can tell you.
Interesting. What's been your because look, you folks know when you step into a courtroom pretty much what that judge's track record is. Come on.
The former commissioner of Social Security, Astro, used the term outliers, and there are outliers. There's a number at both ends, and that's the important thing to realize. The bulk of judges will make similar decisions most of the time. Are there some judges who are way off on one way and way off on the other? Yeah, the caller's from Dover, Delaware. There's stories about Dover, Delaware, and some of the judges there who are particularly harsh. I understand the problem. Judges have independence in their decision making. And if you take that away completely, then well, there is no way to take that away completely. I mean, that's the basic idea.
No, it's interpretation. And when you look at the records, what you're looking at can go either way. I mean, Alan and I look at a file and we can point out the problems along the way. We know where the problems are going to be, depending on the judge. Some of the judges, there are different things they look at. You know, are you doing this? How often? We have one judge, we have several of them. How often are you going out?
Right.
Have you taken a vacation? Have you done this? Have you done that? And despite the fact that federal courts have said, you don't have to be on a couch. This is not the point.
Let's go to Robert in Pocono. Robert, you're stuck in the backlog, huh?
Yes.
What? So tell us, what's your story?
Story is a disability payment purportedly from 2005 to 2007 that I won in court June 3rd of this month, and I got the fully favorable decision June 20th. And I've been waiting 5 months for a payment from the payment center for the 20-some-odd months they owe me, and they just can't get it together to pay me my check.
That's a good point. That's something we haven't covered here. Okay, so an ALJ said, yes, you get it. Now he's been waiting, a number of months. If I get a positive review, if I get a case and the judge says yes, how long do I wait?
We're getting checks almost the same day we're getting decisions.
Yeah, it depends.
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong. There could be other reasons why it's wrong. The best thing I would suggest you do is actually not call the district office, because calling them is sometimes a waste of time. Physically go into the local Social Security district office and say, what's the problem here? Is there something you're missing? Is there something you need? Because it shouldn't take 3 months, 4 months after the decision for the benefits to actually be issued. It usually doesn't take that long.
And I appreciate what Alan said. If you know where your local congressman is, walk in the door
that's
there.
good too.
Pick up the phone.
Let's take an email here.
Done that.
All right, thanks. I just want to remind folks we're going to continue taking phone calls here in the studio for about 10 minutes after, so continue to call 1-800-426-4625. We'll continue to answer your phone calls. This is from T.E. in Woodbury, New Jersey, and his question is, if there is a backlog but I have an emergency, is there a way to get emergency benefits? I'm about to lose my house. Any help, guys?
There are no emergency benefits. What there are expedited hearings under 2 circumstances. If a person is about to be homeless, imminently homeless, then we can provide evidence of that fact. That can be submitted to the administrative law judge. Usually, at that point, it would be the chief administrative law judge who reviews it and decides whether or not it merits expedited handling. So the cases can be expedited under those circumstances. The other circumstance is a person is about to die. And then they'll expedite the hearing for a person who's about to die, though, yeah, that's great, but it doesn't really change things very much.
Judge, we haven't heard from you in a very long time. We haven't had a chance to connect, and we haven't had you here in the studios for a while. Hopefully that will change next year when you come back up to Pennsylvania for a little bit. But we're going to give you the last words, if you will, tonight. Sorry, I only got about 20 seconds or so. If you could just kind of wrap this into a neat little package, if that's possible.
What I want to say is I hope that the Congress, and I hope maybe this program helps the Congress to recognize that the emperor has no clothes, and they have to look at this thing and adopt a new system. This system is not working. The system is graphically illustrated by the fact that in the 6 years that I retired, the backlog has increased by 250,000 cases.
Judge, thanks so much. Unfortunately, we've got to say goodnight. I want to thank you. We'll have you back here in the studio. I want to thank Jess Leventhal and Alan Polonsky. For all of us here at the American Law Journal, thanks for joining us this Monday night. Until next week, case closed.